Welcome to our series B2B Bites, where we learn more about the exciting world of B2B e-commerce. I'm your host, Lance Owide, General Manager, B2B at BigCommerce. Our guest today is Nicole Donnelly, who is the founder of DMG Digital, a digital marketing agency serving B2B manufacturers. Nicole provides marketing, e-commerce readiness consulting for manufacturers to help them improve their online presence and start selling online. Nicole has been in many different roles. She served as a marketing director, but if you want to check her out, she is also the host of a fantastic weekly live stream show that focuses on manufacturing, marketing, and e-commerce. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. What an honor. I'm so excited to talk about this. This is going to be so fun. I get to chat with you, Lance. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. Today, we're going to cover a topic that is actually quite contentious. It's about the sales team. Most manufacturers, distributors, they have sales teams. That's how they sell. And e-commerce can often be seen as a competitive channel. So let's start by dipping our toe. If I'm a manufacturer and I am entering into the world of e-commerce, how should I start that discussion with my sales team? What should I be thinking about to increase adoption in my customer base and get my sales team happy?
Such a great question. The first thing you want to do is listen to them. So you want to do a needs assessment and actually take the time to understand what is it that they love most about that purchasing experience that the company's providing, and really hear them out, hear what their challenges are, what they're concerned about with e-commerce, and really do that needs assessment. That needs assessment also needs to be done with customers. So taking the time to actually talk to customers directly and ask them, what is it that you love most about the purchasing experience here? What are some of the friction points and the challenges? And then use that data to come up with a plan of how e-commerce is going to work. And it's really important to help educate the sales team because they do feel threatened. They feel very threatened that e-commerce is basically going to take business from them and that they're going to become obsolete. But in B2B e-commerce, there's always going to be a need for a sales rep consultant who can help with some of these really complex orders. So there's always going to be that role. So rather than positioning e-commerce as a threat to the sales rep, it's really important to educate them to say, hey, this can be your sales admin so that you're elevated to really help handle some of those more complex orders and let the e-commerce store handle some of those repeat orders that are happening over and over again. It's going to allow you to sell more in less time. And so if you kind of teach them from that perspective, then it can help break down those walls of resistance. But it really does start with listening to them, really taking the time to hear out what their concerns are and validate those concerns, and then let them be part of creating the sales adoption plan that you need to have in place as you start to build out your e-commerce store.
I love that. I often think of that as sort of an 80-20. You can cover 80% of those very basic orders, hopefully out of the box online. But that 20%, which are probably 80% of your revenue, that's still going to sit with your sales team. It requires a complex sell because there are difficult technical questions that need to be answered. And the sales team are always going to own that. But in a world pre-e-commerce, maybe the sales team are spending 80% of their time on those less complex orders when they should be focused on the more complex orders that generate more revenue. And you mentioned something there that I think was really interesting, which was you've got to train that sales team. You have to train your sales team. And you've seen this a lot. How do I go about doing that? How do I build a training plan? What should I be thinking about? What do I include in it?
Oh, great question. So as you're rolling out your e-commerce store, you're going to be going through phases of development, right? There's a life cycle of how, there's a discovery phase where you're trying to understand what the requirements are that you need to build your e-commerce store around. And so it's really important to make sure you involve your sales team very, very early in that process. So from the very beginning of the discovery phase, when you're trying to decide what business problems do we need e-commerce to solve, how do we want to set this up, make sure that your sales team is involved in that. Make sure they're involved in setting the adoption KPIs on how you're going to measure the success of the store long-term and let them be a part of that. And then it's really important once the store is launched, that you have a program in place where you're doing regular trainings with them so that they know and understand how to actually use the store. So sales reps need to understand how to set up customer accounts, how to set roles and permissions, how to masquerade as the customer, how to really get in there and make sure they know how to take care of those transactions, because they're going to be the ones on the front lines helping their customers to be able to adopt to this way of selling. Because that adoption process, it's not just for your employees. Your customers really have to learn this new way of selling and doing business. And that's really such a great opportunity. It's a lot of times companies think of e-commerce as expanding into new markets, which is fantastic and obviously a great point. But the more that you can bring your existing customers online, that's really, I think, where the bread and butter is and where the real opportunity is. So making sure that you have training programs for your sales team, a regular feedback loop where you train them on how to do these, standard, checkout processes. The more confidence they have to do that, the more they'll be able to teach their customers how to do that. And there's ways you can support them through this. You can have an on-demand training wiki, which we build out for our clients, that has really short little video clips on just basic admin, specific, how to set up a customer account, how do I set up this role and permission for this, how to set up a requisition list, for example. Little bite-sized video clips that are always available for them and written SOPs that anyone on the team can access that lives in perpetuity. The other thing that really helps is to have like a script for the sales team, that's something that they can use to teach their clients about it, something that they can, speak to that addresses some of the needs and challenges that they may be having, so they can encourage them to do that. And then it's really important that you have KPIs around it too. So incentivizing your sales team. Sales reps love incentives. So the more that you can incentivize your sales reps to convert these customers to online sales, the better and more successful that adoption is going to be. So those are just a few suggestions that can help.
I love that point there, KPIs. What KPIs have you seen work and be used? And also maybe what hasn't worked before? What KPIs when set up just don't incentivize that sales team to, move customers online?
That's a great question. I would say at a very basic level, setting up the e-commerce sales as leads, essentially, for your sales reps is a great KPI. So seeing how many leads are coming in and how many of those leads that are, e-commerce sales, they can be converted to upsells for some more complex orders. So that works really well, just at a basic level. But other KPIs that can really work is making sure that the sales reps are getting a higher commission for e-commerce sales than for the regular sales. So they're really motivated to try to move those accounts online. That's one that can really help get adoption up. And then the other KPI that really helps is having these KPIs built into the leaderboard so that this is something that's part of the way they do business, and building some goals around, okay, we're going to set up this number of customers on accounts, on e-commerce accounts this month, and making sure. So those are the top ones that I've seen that have worked well.
I love that. Make a competition out of it, and your sales teams are going to love it. So as a kind of final question, as we come to a close, how do manufacturers, distributors ensure that they're keeping those online processes and those sales processes up to date? How do you create that feedback loop to ensure that processes aren't getting stale, and that we're continuing to service our customers in the best manner possible?
Yeah, great question. I think that accountability is so key. It's never a one and done situation. Adoption takes time. I think about my daughters who are learning how to play the piano. And if you have a kid who's learning to play a musical instrument, you know that you have to play that song over and over and over and over and over again until you actually master it. So something that really helps is just making sure that you have a standing meeting. Maybe it's you call it your e-commerce sales meeting. It's a standing meeting that you have regularly, and making sure you have a feedback loop that's formal. So whether that's a ticketing system that you can use, that your sales reps can use to gather information from customers that they're hearing on the front lines about what's working, what's not working, that you can document in that ticketing system, or even as simple as a Google Doc, just a place where people can record that feedback. And if they're not recording it in between meetings, because let's be honest, sales reps just want to sell. They don't want to do any admin work. So, and they're great at that. So let them sell. At least having that meeting, that standing meeting, is a great way to just ask them, hey, what have you been hearing from customers? What's working, what's not, and documenting it there. And having that documentation is key, because then you can use that information to see, like, hey, is this a DevOps need? Like, do we need to actually update the store? Is this a training need? Or is this a business process need that needs to be resolved? And so being able to get that information, gather it up, and then kind of figure out from there what needs to be changed. But I would say definitely having a standing meeting and as leadership making it a priority by having people regularly have to report back on progress is what really is going to make it work.
I love that. Bring them into the process, get their feedback. They're going to feel more ownership that way too. Nicole, this has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with our audience. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.